Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
To the barricades, the soon-to-be founder of the Italian empire heroically thundered, waving his rifle. But nobody appeared to attack. The barricades were beehives in Bedlam, American reporter George Selders laconically recorded. But on the other side, there was nothing but sunshine and dead quiet. The police kept away, the enemy kept away. True, one shot did graze Benito Mussolini's ear, only just missing his head. Even the pro-fascist newspaper editor Margherita Sarfatti, though, admitted it had been fired from behind him by an overexcited supporter. As former United States President Donald Trump's election campaign reached its bizarre climax, a rally in New York punctuated by crude racist comments and even a lewd oral sex joke about Vice President Kamala Harris, some around the world have been struggling to understand if the man who could become America's next leader is best understood as a fascist or a clown. True, the moral clucking over Trump's language is a bit overblown. Literature students, after all, learn early on that talking dirty is a well-established part of the high literary canon, from classical Sanskrit poetry to Turkish erotic literature to Geoffrey Chaucer's sexually and scatologically scandalous The Canterbury Tales. Less easy to laugh away, though, is the charge of fascism. Trump's own former Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, after all, has alleged the former president thought Adolf Hitler did some good things. Trump's relationships with white supremacists, his undisguised racism, and his alliance with extremist Christian evangelism all make Kelly's claims pretty hard to dismiss. Facilitated by the helpful retreat of Italy's generals into their barracks and some gentle assistance from the country's anti-communist establishment, Il Duce Mussolini's stormtroopers seized power in the autumn of 1922 without fighting anyone at their barricades. To many contemporary observers, like the author Israel Zangwill, the coup appeared to resemble comic opera more closely than tragedy. The Duce did succeed in establishing himself in Italy less than a decade after that farce, though, reordering not just the country's political life, but also its society and culture. Few poorly aimed shots have been quite so historically consequential, until possibly now. Like post-Enlightenment Europe, America has been the site of very rapid secularization. Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, the secularization of American society has accelerated. 2 years ago, for the first time, less than half of Americans said they were members of a church, synagogue, or mosque, down from 50% in 2018 and 70% in 1999. Americans are still more likely than Europeans to believe in some form of God. This is a profound cultural change. From its earliest years, scholars like Mark Edwards have argued, the American Republic saw itself, imagined itself as an instrument of God's will on earth. Today, journalist T.M. Brown reports, abandoned churches litter America's heartland. Some have been converted into private homes, others into recreational centers, schools, and daycare facilities. Even to contemporaries, it seemed evident that fascism in Italy cast itself as a new religion. Fascism, the philosopher H.W. Schneider observed in 1929, has the rudiments of a new religion. There can be no doubt that already this new cult has taken some hold of the Italians' heart and imagination, he observed. Likewise, the great historian of fascism, George Moshe, wrote in 1966 that it was a new religion not afraid to use traditional religious symbols and gave its followers a feeling of transcendence. Traditional religion, historian Walter Adamson observes, was by no means under threat when fascism arose in the 1920s. The processes of industrialization, the rise of the political left, and dramatic changes in social mores, though, had all contributed to a social urge for a new kind of culture. The formation of the Italian state in 1861 had been brought about by diplomatic maneuver rather than mass politics, Adamson points out. Thus, having made Italy, something was needed to make Italians. In 1932, historian Simonetta Falasca Zamponi writes, the fascist regime put up an exhibition hailing its political martyrs, modeled closely on a sacrario or chapel containing holy relics. Every party branch also kept a shrine where the memory of the dead was enshrined. Historian Emilio Gentile argues that fascism, like Nazism in Germany, thus created an entire system of rituals, myths, and beliefs that installed the state and the nation as objects of worship. Fascism drew deep into both the country's Catholic heritage and the values of its 19th century nationalist movement to abolish the distinction between religion and politics, to create, as many have commented, a civic religion. Terrified by the thunder rolling behind her son's locked door, so Seldes claimed, little Mussolini's mother became very worried. Are you mad, my son? She said. Only lunatics talk to themselves. Do not worry, dear mother, he replied. I was practicing oratory. To the grown Mussolini, speech making seemed to hold the keys to power. I quote, the sculptor sometimes breaks the marble out of rage because it does not precisely mold in his hands according to his vision, Mussolini told the German journalist Emil Ludwig. Everything depends on that, to dominate the masses as an artist. Lewd demagoguery of the kind delivered by Trump witness his, shall we say, surprising disquisition on a former golf legend's penis size delivered apropos of nothing might not seem to qualify him as a skilled orator. But there's little doubt this kind of language resonates with his audience. The former president linguist George Lashkoff has observed, uses a large number of common salesperson's confidence building tricks. This playbook was also used by the media magnate Silvio Berlusconi, the politician who really invented modern right-wing populism and put it on center stage. 4 times Prime Minister of Italy, Berlusconi successfully manipulated aesthetics using advertising professionals to drive media myth-making and cosmetic surgeons to hide his age. He built his audience, political scientist Paolo Mancini notes. Forza Italia, his coalition, successfully united middle-class anger against discredited elites with working-class rage over deindustrialization and lack of opportunity. Like Trump and Berlusconi, Mussolini was also a psychologically complex character. The dictator's father, the blacksmith Alessandro Mussolini, believed that the belt was an excellent pedagogical tool. Trump's father, too, his niece and psychologist Mary Trump has written, was a high-functioning sociopath who reveled in bullying, racism, and sexism. For all 3 men, the conquest of women was critical to their image building. Trump openly womanized by his own account because he believed he'd never run for public office and therefore didn't have to worry. Fueled by a German-made aphrodisiac pill, Hormovin, the journalist Roberto Ola tells us, Il Duce used his brutal sexual encounters with several hundred women as a tool for image building, a real man. For his part, Berlusconi engaged less than discreetly in drug-fueled orgies. There's some reason to suspect that unresolved psychological complexes underpin these kinds of behaviors. Mussolini's first serious girlfriend, Rachel Guidi, with whom he moved to Milan and had a child, was the daughter of his own father's lover. Make of that what you will. Left-wing totalitarian rulers of the same period, among them the Soviet Union's Joseph Stalin most famously, kept their private lives jealously guarded, it is interesting to note. There is little evidence, moreover, that oratorial skill or performance for their audience was an important part of the left totalitarian arsenal. Even though Mussolini seduced millions, he delivered very little. The trains famously did not run on time. Bergen Evans, who served as a Franco-Belgique Tours Company guide in the summer of 1930, wrote he was, I quote, willing to make an affidavit to the effect that most Italian trains which he travelled on were not on schedule or near it. Though significant public investments were made in infrastructure during the dictator's rule, most of what appeared in that time had been begun before 1922. Fascist rule initially saw Italy demonstrate some healthy GDP growth, data shows, but promises to usher in a new kind of corporate state built on the twin pillars of privatization and welfarism remained unrealized. The 1930s saw GDP growth fall to levels worse than under the preceding Liberal Prime Minister Giovanni Giotti, and the war eventually to its destruction. Likewise, Daniel Verdu reminds us that Berlusconi's promise to make Italy great again ushered in a decade where GDP contracted by 3.1%, consumption fell, and debt grew. For its part, the numbers show Trump's economic record, true to this pattern, fell very short of the hype. There's no arguing with a religious experience, though, which is what Trump, continuing in the long tradition of right-wing populism, really offers his supporters. America's political institutions, of course, are nowhere near as weak as those of pre-fascist Italy. There's little or no chance of an implosion. The truth, however, is that Trump's rise has already brought about a hollowing out of both the culture and unstated social conventions on which all democracies ultimately rest. Even if Trump loses this coming election, repairing the damage will be a long and difficult challenge. I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm a contributing editor at ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.